direct to your smartphone. Sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good evening, it's Bev in for Patrick this evening. So, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has finally resigned today after he came under fire for his handling of the Church of England's biggest child abuse scandal ever. A scathing report released this week criticised his handling of the allegations against the former barrister and evangelical Christian John Smythe, who sexually abused hundreds of young children in the 1970s and 80s. The independent report has found that the abuse could have been exposed 4 years earlier if the Archbishop had contacted the authorities. Justin Welby has said today that it had become clear that he must take personal and institutional responsibility for what he described as the long and re-traumatising period after he was informed of allegations in 2013 but failed to act on them. Just hours before he finally resigned, the Prime Minister refused to back him for the second time in a row. Several high-profile Church of England bishops had also called for Welby to go. So how were that many people, including Justin Welby, either unaware or willing to turn a blind eye to the flogging of boys that was so bad they were forced to wear nappies to absorb the blood? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I'm joined here in the studio by Esther Kraku, Bill Rammell and Stephen Wolfe. Good to see you guys. Thank you for being here this evening. It's not a cheerful topic to start with, is it? It's really grim, Bill. What else can be done for these victims? Is it going to be enough that Welby's stepped aside today?
Look, I'm not a practising Christian, although I could consider myself a Christian, and I've always thought Justin Welby was a decent guy. But these series of incidents and the report that has come out demonstrate a shocking degree of an abdication of leadership. You know, he knew about it in 2013, never met any of the victims for 7 years. You know, he didn't report it to the police. He didn't report it to the authorities in South Africa. It is absolutely shocking. In terms of what's done, I mean, one, the new choice of the Archbishop of Canterbury has got to be whiter than white, but I think there's got to be a complete overhaul of governance within the Church of England. If you look at one of the key recommendations of the Making report, which came out last week, it's that they need an independent body to oversee safeguarding within the Church of England. And what that effectively says is there's absolutely no confidence on the church leadership carrying out those responsibilities.
But why is that, Esther?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, just to go back, just to clarify, it's clear that he knew about the allegations in 1982. So it was presented to him, all the evidence was presented to him in 2013, but he actually was aware of the rumours and was actually roommates with the person who published this report back in the 1980s. So this has been going on for a very long time. But I just want to point out the damage that Justin Welby has done to the institution, and also just in his role as Archbishop of Canterbury. You know, he lost a lot of moral authority by wading into clearly political issues that was very ill-advised because it alienated members of the public, and this was a big problem for the church that saw sort of church going.
Such as reparations.
Well, yes, and the Rwanda scheme, for example, where he made overt comments without offering an alternative. If you're going to get into politics, you're going to have to choose one side or another. So even in his role as the Archbishop of Canterbury, he did a lot of damage because he veered away from what was expected of him and became quite a political actor. So much so that actually any kind of interventions he made weren't really covered in the news because people just thought, so what, who cares? But now for this to come out, for him to leave his role in such disgrace after this, I mean, it's all well and good to say you have to have an independent body to make sure that abuse in the church, for goodness sake, doesn't happen or not doesn't get reported. But we actually have to talk about what he did, the damage he has done as an individual in this institution by undermining his leadership and his moral authority and then leaving in disgrace in this horrible manner.
He, of course, Justin Welby insists that he didn't know anything about it until 2013. Stephen, does that seem plausible? We have to take his word for it, but I can't picture an environment in which that many young boys on these Christian camps, over 100 boys, didn't say something to somebody. Somebody's turned a blind eye. somebody has heard the rumour and think, what do they think? Do they just think, well, there's one of the complainants said, you know, he wasn't a very nice man. Well, there's your understatement.
Well, it isn't a very understatement. I mean, this man is a disgusting and thankfully dead individual and can't carry out these crimes on anybody else anymore. And I think that it is implausible for people like ourselves to think about the amount of evidence that was there prior to 2013 that was actually coming through, as Esther said, through rumours, and as Bill said, through the evidence that came through reports later that showed that evidence had been building for some time. But the key point of why I think Welby, and it's a good day for the church, is that this man traduced the institution. He was political, not spiritual. Yeah. He has crushed the spirit and heart of the lay clergy and the clergy across the country. He looks down upon those people who actually are the parishioners. He's removed everything up towards the top, and he looked as though he was happier shaking hands with the great and the good of the world and being a politician, where he criticised those who supported Brexit, like myself, who supports managed migration. We were not welcome in the church. He not only undertook all of those different aspects, but at this instance, for 4 years, he did nothing.
I mean,
that in itself is shameful.
So in a sense, you're saying he possibly should have stood down before now?
Well, I think he should have gone a long time ago for the lack of spirituality.
Do you think he changed that role? Did he make that role too political?
He made it too political, but of course Thomas Cranmer, who helped create the role under King Henry VIII, was a very political man in his first instance. But he needn't do that, because prior to that, you know, when we had Rowan, who was the head of the church at that time, a very poetic individual, liked to speak to the people in the spiritual way.
Member of the Labour Party, by the way.
And that doesn't really matter. It's not about
the
Labour Party had a history of Christianity running through it.
But there's a reason why the royal family is above politics. There's a reason for that. You undermine yourself when things like this happen because we're inevitably human. I mean, this failure, I wouldn't say is just a human mistake. This is a catastrophic failure. And like I said, the person who published this report, who was roommates with Justin Welby, said it's highly unlikely that he didn't know about this when these rumours were going on since the 1980s, and he was in the thick of it. I mean, he volunteered in Zimbabwe.
It does sound cultural, though, Bill. Like, it does sound like that clearly the culture at that time was problematic. Absolutely. Is it still in the Anglican Church?
I think it is. And the irony here is he was brought in because he was seen as a good manager and he had good political antennae. I think that's blown up in his face. There's actually, I think, a degree of agreement, unusually, on these issues. I was driving here this evening and I was listening to a radio clip where he was opposing the Rwanda bill. Now, I oppose the Rwanda bill.
But you're a politician.
No, but hold on.
That's your job.
But he prayed God in support of his argument. Now, you know...
And yet God
doesn't take sides on political issues, and I think that's deeply problematic. He's also someone who, you know, he cites one of his most significant influencers as Paula Venables, the disgraced former chief executive of the Post Office. I mean, you know, I don't want to get involved in a pile-on, but I think he's got some serious questions.
But Bev, this goes to the institutionalism that we've talked about. We've seen that across a whole sector of our society, whether it's the civil service, whether it's the Church of England, whether it's our politicians. There seems to be this culture that they want to just garner themselves as a group of people and ignore everybody else below them. And if they disagree with them, let's give them a hard time. Look what's said we've seen in the United States. The latest idea, it's garbage Biden said about the people who are voting for Trump. We've heard all that sort of language about those people who supported Brexit. All of that is coming to
members of our own cabinet abusing the now president of the United States.
And what we've got here with Justin Welby is part of an institution. But I want to see those people in they call it the pink or the blue room, that would have been talking to him prior to him going. I bet none of them said, resign, Justin. I bet they said, you could ride this out.
See, Welby said he tried to push through some safeguarding in recent years, and that he was met with resistance. What kind of establishment that deals with children, the church will have children, will come in the church from time to time, what kind of establishment has pushback on the
and
issue
also
of safeguarding.
what he's saying is very vague, because we have to know what his ideas of safeguarding are. So he's just saying this and expecting us to take it at face value. I think for me, I'm not really concerned necessarily about the nature of the politics, but I am concerned about the fact that there is no room for being above politics in our public life, and that's a big problem. There has to be room for like members of the royal family who are overtly not political, and members of the clergy who are overtly non-political. That's a very, very important buffer that we need in society. Because when politics gets heated, which inevitably does, politics is quite personal and people often have strong views, you have to have that buffer at the top that says, actually, it's okay for you to have your views, but we are all united under this one banner, and it's fine to not be political.
That's gone though, hasn't it? It's almost like everybody now, even the royal family, are now into politics in the way that they weren't when, say, Queen Elizabeth II was alive. But
I think there's a more serious concern about the culture within the Church of England. If you read that report, it actually says that there was a report within an investigation within the Church of England in the early 1980s. 6 people were involved. One of them explicitly said on the record, I do not want to communicate anything about this case because it will damage the standing of the Church of England. And, you know, you go back through the series of scandals we've had, the contaminated blood, the post office, the Church of England. Running through all of those is a determination to protect the reputation of the institution, almost regardless.
We call it the blob, and it means the blob for a reason. These people have no heart, no soul. It's all about protecting themselves, their own part within that institution. And I would like to see not only Justin Welby go, I want to see everybody else on that council that we're advising him over the last few days to go as well, because they have a part to play in this. They've been supporting him whilst this happens, and they've been supporting his views over the past few years.
But Stephen, the major reason he's gone is that there was an insurrection within the synod about what was happening. So, you know, some people have acted responsibly.
Yeah. OK, Esther, Stephen, Bill, thank you for now. In a statement, Justin Welby has said, it is very clear that I must take personal and institutional responsibility for the long and re-traumatising period between 2013 and 24. I hope this decision makes clear how seriously the Church of England understands the need for change and our profound commitment to creating a safer church. As I step down, I do so in sorrow with all the victims and survivors of abuse. He goes on, I believe that stepping aside is in the best interest of the Church of England, which I dearly love and which I have been honoured to serve. I pray that decision points us back towards the love that Jesus Christ has for every one of us. OK, let us know your thoughts on that this evening. gbnews.com/your say. Right, there are just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to win Christmas on Us in the Great British Giveaway. Christmas isn't 2 weeks away, is it, fellas? I've not missed something. That's 25,025 in tax-free cash, plus a whole host of Christmas goodies to ensure you have a fantastically festive time. The best news is we will get it to you in time for Christmas Day. Time is running out to get your entry in. Here are all the details that you need to win. Right, from child abuse to assisted dying. I promise you this show is not designed to give you nightmares tonight. The assisted dying bill was introduced to Parliament today. 2 doctors and a judge will be needed to make the end-of-life call. But is the proposed legislation a massive danger to the vulnerable and the elderly? I'm going to be joined very soon by a man who tore up his Dignitas application when he realised the dangerous trajectory of assisted dying legislation. First, though, the BBC confirmed today that Gary Lineker will quit as Matchtoday presenter at the end of the football season, and the competition to replace him is heating up. 6 of the 7 favourites are said to be women. But should a female football pundit really be commentating on the men's game? Going head-to-head on that next, the journalist Rebecca Reid and the former footballer John Fashanu.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for The Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles, and so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that, touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in, a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling or are still battling cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. So, should a female football pundit replace Gary Lineker on Match of the Day? It's time for the head-to-head. That's right, today the BBC confirmed that Gary Lineker will step down as Match of the Day presenter at the end of the football season. He's going to remain at the BBC until the end of the 2026 World Cup. He's a controversial presenter, of course. He's the highest paid on-air star at the corporation, but he's become a lightning rod for criticisms over impartiality. He was taken off air, do you remember this, in March 23 after comparing the language used by the Tory government on migration to the language used by Germany in the 1930s. And attention has now turned to Lineker's replacement. Reports tonight suggest that 6 of the top 7 favourites are female presenters. Former Lioness turned BBC presenter Alex Scott is a bookie's favourite. Other names in the mix include former gymnast Gabby Logan, Sky Rich Sports presenter Kelly Kate. She is, of course, the daughter of Kelly Dalglish, and Kenny Dalglish, and TNT Sports presenter Laura Woods. But should a female football pundit really be presenting Premier League highlights on Match of the Day? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews. And while you're there, why not vote in our poll? I'll bring you those results in a few short minutes. But let's talk about this with author and journalist Rebecca Reid. And we're hoping we can get John Fashioney back. I think we've just lost his line. But Rebecca, good evening. Always lovely to see you. Feels kind of appropriate. We've got 2 women discussing this, discussing whether a woman should be hosting the football. What do you make of it? What do you think? Should it be Alex Scott? Who should it be?
I think Alex Scott is the obvious choice, although also Gabby Logan is a fantastic broadcaster. Not for a second do I think that it should be a woman just because it should be a woman. There are a lot of women who wouldn't be qualified to do this. I would be perhaps one of the worst choices imaginable, having never watched a game of football. But the idea, so I'm not suggesting that it has to be a woman just purely for the sake of her being a woman. However, I do think that it would be really good to bring the changes. I think that it would bring a lot, it would refresh the format. Lineker's been doing it for goodness knows how long. And also, equally importantly, Alex Scott and Gabby Logan, who I think are probably the most compelling candidates, have a long history of respecting all of the rules, not breaking impartiality, as well as being very talented broadcasters. So I'm going to say that if you have an issue with one of them presenting this programme, it might be that you genuinely don't like listening to women talk, because they are incredibly well-researched, talented broadcasters with a lot of experience. I can't see what other issue you could possibly have other than not wanting a woman on a show that's traditionally been fronted by a man.
I think we've got John Fashanu up now, Rebecca. Here he is. Evening, John. How lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. Right, should a woman host Match of the Day, John? Our women's team do very well in football.
Football is changing. We must understand that there are a lot of changes and they're coming they're here now. Yes, a woman can be a referee. A woman can be a player. We shouldn't have this no women all the time. This is what I went through when I was playing football. Even to look at my mother, I wouldn't take her to the stadium because, Mum, women don't like football, Mummy, so please sit down. But that's over. Those things have gone now, and we're now in a period where, of course, we can have a lady as a referee, as a lineswoman. And even the truth is, if it got to that, there's some very good footballers in there, women.
Rebecca, wouldn't it be a kind of post-feminist world where this wasn't even a debate? Because the woman if a woman gets this job, she is going to be criticised for only being in the shortlist because she is a woman. And I would actually say, in Alex Scott's case, I think that accusation might be accurate. Now, all I mean by that is she doesn't have the experience of, say, Gabby Logan. Gabby's been hosting sport on TV for over 25 years. Alex Scott is very, very new to it, but she does have the footballing experience. But with that in mind, surely the experience of being a broadcaster will trump any idea of tokenism if a woman gets it otherwise.
I mean, I think GBNews is a very good example of a channel that's often given people without much broadcast experience the opportunity to be on television to greater and lesser degrees of success. So I would say that, we're clearly a channel that believes in giving people a chance. And Alex Scott's been doing it on and off since 2017, which in my head is 2 years ago, but is actually 7 years. So she's not inexperienced. I would argue that Gabby Logan's less likely to get it because the BBC famously has an issue with ageism, particularly with women. So I think that the BBC would be gagging for somebody young and beautiful. I would actually love to see an older woman given the opportunity because older women are given the least opportunities on television, particularly in this country. I think people are frustrated that your identity would be playing into this. But as football is changing, as John clearly says, it would be really nice to see little girls feeling more represented. And also, we see it with Taylor Swift now in America, that lots of men get to watch American football with their daughters now because she brings in the teenage girls and the dads already wanted to watch it. And how great if more girls want to watch Question of Sport with their dads, because that's, sorry, not Question of Sport, Match of the Day. That's how much I know about sports. But how lovely would it be if more young women wanted to watch it with their parents because they see somebody who represents them on screen?
Well, John, that also then raises the issue, should Match of the Day be showing women's football, weekend football, as well as Premier League men's football? If that's what we want to do with our game, is to make it appeal to both sexes in that way or represent both sexes?
It's hard for us men to accept that some women can be better than men. And I say that because I've had 16 years in Premier League, and I think that I'm qualified to be able to say what I think. I have here in Nigeria seen women who are much better than men. So I don't understand why we're always saying, well, do we want any women? Of course we want women. They're part of the game. They're part of the football game. They might not have created it.
But they are part of it. I think we might have frozen. I think John might have frozen as well.
But now they are part, and it's time for us to do.
Rebecca, what do you think the response will be from hardcore football fans if it is a woman that gets this job? I mean, Mark Chapman for me would be the obvious choice. He's hosted he's hosted Match Today when Gary Lineker hasn't been there. He's been working at 5 Live, etc. for years. He's very well liked. He doesn't appear to have a massive ego. He lets the ex-footballers talk, even though he, isn't an ex-footballer himself. Maybe the BBC are just going to play it safe and go with someone like Chappers.
Well, I think playing it safe would probably be Alex Scott, because I think it would bring in a different demographic. And I think making people cross tends to create a bit of a stir. It puts the name of the show in the headlines. It gets attention. So I think, yes, it might be tempting to use an old pair of hands, but actually, I don't know. I instinctively, I thought all men who love football were going to be awful about this. But actually, when I looked online, I was being a bit unfair to men. They actually have been fairly reasonable. They seem to get very angry about the idea of a female manager for the England men's football team. And people seem to get quite upset about the idea of women's football being shown by default on Match of the Day. But actually, from the research I did, men were saying if it's a really interesting women's game, I'd be happy to have it shown, and a female host is actually not a problem. So I feel like I perhaps have slightly misjudged men, though I would say Alex Scott has talked a lot about the level of abuse, both racist and sexist, that she gets online. So I imagine she probably would be victim to some of that.
I'm sure she would, and there would be accusations that it's tokenism, that she hasn't earned her stripes to be in that position. She hasn't won a World Cup or she wasn't playing football for 15, 20 years. Forgive me, Alex Scott, if I've got that wrong. Maybe you were. My level of football knowledge is probably about the same as yours, Rebecca. But there will be BBC meetings right now, surely, in which they are saying anyone but a white man. Anyone but a white man, that's what we'll go with.
I agree, but I think that's probably because they did just have a white man. And I also think that that if you've just had a black woman, then maybe it is time to have a white man. But I do think changing things up is really positive. That does not mean that every single time it should be a woman. And particularly the BBC is very bad for getting reality TV stars with no experience to front documentaries because they are young and good looking and female. That is not how you make good telly. Variety is good, but variety doesn't always mean the most diverse person.
OK, Rebecca, John Fashanu, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Who do you agree with? Should a female pundit replace Gary Lineker? David on X has said, why male or female? Just pick the best candidate. No, DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. And Peter on X says, just cancel the show altogether. Donna has also got in touch on Twitter and she said, definitely not. And I am a woman that loves football. It definitely shouldn't be a woman. And your verdict is in now. 7% of you agree that a female pundit should replace Gary Lineker, while 93% of you say they shouldn't. Let's just hope we didn't do a poll about who should sit in for Patrick Christys. Otherwise, I'd be coming out very badly. Right, listen, still to come. Keir Starmer's just signed us up to yet another climate goal. He's promised to reduce greenhouse gases by a very specific 81% by 2035. But can we really trust him when he says that he won't force Brits to change their behaviour to reach net zero targets? The climate scientist, Professor Christian Dunn, is going to join me to debate that very soon. But first, the assisted dying bill was published today with 2 doctors and a High Court judge needed to make any end-of-life call. But does the legislation set a dangerous precedent? The author Paul Carroll certainly thinks so. He's got a fascinating story. He scrapped his application to Dignitas after changing his mind on the issue. We will find out why next. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight, and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest, tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well. 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about, likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening. It's 9:38. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Now, the proposed law to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales was introduced to Parliament today. Under the proposed legislation, those who wish to terminate their lives must be expected to die within 6 months. 2 independent doctors must agree that the person is eligible, and then the judge will have to take evidence from at least one of the doctors and could question the terminally ill person themselves before making the final call. Although a doctor may prepare the fatal substance, the legislation states that the person who wishes to die must self-administer that drug. So Kim Leadbeater, the Labour MP who's put forward the bill, has said that the new proposed legislation ensures the strictest safeguards in the world. Well, joining me now is the author, Paul Carroll. Good evening, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us. So your story is fascinating. It is unusual. Tell us about the journey that you've been on in regards to this topic.
Absolutely, Bev. Well, I'm a convert because about 6 years ago I actually joined Dignitas and signed up as an insurance policy. I wasn't ill, but I suppose I was just planning ahead. And I joined thinking that if I ever needed this escape route, if my health deteriorated to such a point, why not sign up now? And by the way, it's incredibly easy to sign up for Dignitas. But then I went through...
But let me just ask you, Paul, that is some spectacular forward planning there, and that is quite dark, but I quite like your willingness to take control of that situation very much. How old were you then?
Mid-50s.
OK, and in good health?
Yes, good health. Still am, thankfully, touch wood. But my partner's younger than me by 15 years. We were doing our wills. So we were doing a bit of paperwork, and this came up. And insofar as what would it be like for you, my partner, to look after me if I reached dementia? My mother had dementia at that point as well. So that, it played in. But having signed the forms, we sort of forgot about those. It was like the insurance policy if you ever get broken into.
Did you have to pay anything, Paul? Did you have to pay anything? Sorry to interrupt you, but did you have to pay to sign on?
Yes, it's a signing on fee. Yeah, it's about. I think it was 200. It's about £200.
Right.
70 Swiss francs, one-off payment, and you could renew that. But again, it was to give you peace of mind that you'd done something about it if you ever needed it. But really, it was. I hadn't thought it through, I have to say. And then my mother passed away, my mother-in-law passed away very quick, and that started to turn my mind on this completely. My mother was in her early 90s, had suffered from dementia, but was a happy soul, and she clung on to life as long as she could. Unfortunately, my partner's mother, at the age of 69, was diagnosed with cancer, and the treatment didn't work, and within 11 months she passed away. But during that, which was obviously very harrowing, as many people know who've seen loved ones pass away and suffer, at no point during that process did we ever think we wanted to accelerate that end. And certainly she didn't. She clung on, as long every breath that she took. So this all fed in, and I decided at that point I wanted to write a novel where I picked 4 people who decided to embark on this assisted death route. And so I was looking at the different reasons that might go in there, with a view to basically testing the reader really as to what would they do in those circumstances. Did they agree with the circumstances those people had got into and elected for an assisted death? Would they beg these characters to change their mind and not go through with it? And it is, shaking hands with Elvis, it's about comedy. And people say, oh, can you really write something that's satirical about such a sensitive subject? But it is interesting that a number of people have come back to me and reviewed it and said, listen, I learned so much more about assisted dying and where I would stand on it. And they were changing their mind. It's not pro or
And because we're a bit short on time, Paul, which I'm gutted about because I think the story's fascinating. But what's your main concern? That it will be abused by people, by the living, the well?
I think in writing the book, I did lots of research into all the countries around the world where assisted dying was legal, and that rang a lot of alarm bells ringing. And I'm glad it's been debated in the UK because I think it does need to be aired very, very thoroughly. But I think whilst it's a very emotional argument and it's easy to say, this person, do you want to see this person suffer? You're inhumane if you say you won't allow assisted dying. But if you look at the figures of the number of assisted deaths in the other countries, I think people would be surprised. It's 4% of deaths in Canada now within literally 8 years. What would that translate to in the UK? So I think Parliament needs to say how many assisted deaths they would anticipate a year. The other thing is the pro-assisted dying lobby don't agree. So the current legislation under proposal suggests 6 months left to live, 2 doctors, a judge, although how do you do that in 6 months? Okay, practical issues. But there are a greater number of people, say with longer-term illnesses, neurological illnesses, depression, mental disorders, who say, well, hang on, we've got the same right. We're happy, we're as miserable in life as you are.
Yeah.
We've got to endure it longer. And the legal challenges will.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a complicated issue. Paul Carroll, thank you so much, the author of a book on that issue. Now, still to come this evening, the former Labour advisor John McTernan sparked outrage last night after he made these comments on this very show with Patrick.
If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
I'm going to tackle that at 10 o'clock, but first, Keir Starmer's just signed us up to yet another climate goal. Can we really trust him when he says that he won't force Brits to change their behaviour to reach net zero? Climate scientist Professor Christys Dunn joins me next. Don't go anywhere.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tell us about this film, because it's obviously come from your own experiences.
We wanted to create something for the entertainment industry that wasn't just another kind of dull documentary. I mean, some of them are brilliant, they're very informative, but you kind of leave a bit bewildered and a little bit kind of flat. So we thought, I've got a passion for writing and you've obviously got an unbounded knowledge on the subject. Why don't we create a film with a kind of satirical look on eating disorders?
So this came it's been made 20 years after your own...
It is 20 years.
20 years,
practically to the day.
So Samantha, you suffered with OCD and an eating disorder as well?
Yes.
And that's when your mum became a counsellor, is that right?
A little bit later on, I think we spent a bit of time in the system and I realised that it wasn't working for us. So I took it on myself to learn as much as I could about the subject.
I call it a tragedy, probably the wrong word, but suffering.
No, it is a tragedy because mental ill health and eating disorders destroy the lives of not only the sufferers but their families as well.
But you've turned that into something so positive and so
It's amazing, really, that 20 years ago our story was just beginning, and 20 years on, what we've done. But I have to say that very little has changed in the system.
I've heard that.
And I think that's what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so...
That was why we wanted to... I mean, I work with families every day and I see the destruction that eating disorders and other mental illnesses not just bring to the sufferer, but the whole family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really passions me, because obviously 20 years ago we were there. And I just feel that so much more needs to be done. And I think with eating disorders, there is still a lot of misunderstanding around the subject.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Looking at your views just coming in. If Alex Scott gets a job on Match of the Day, says Carol, it will be a box-ticking exercise. And if, like Question Sport, she does, the viewing figures will go through the floor. This is what's so difficult, isn't it? If a woman gets it, everyone's going to say it's tokenism. And you know what? It might be. What else has got here? Will Patrick be back tomorrow, says Lie. I don't think he is, actually. I think he's going on his holidays. Anyway, right, speaking at COP29... I won't be here tomorrow night, though. Speaking at COP29 climate conference in Azerbaijan, the Prime Minister has signed Britain up to an ambitious new climate goal. He's promised that the UK will cut greenhouse gas emissions by 81% by 2035. Yet he's also promised not to lecture us Brits in order to achieve that goal.
What we're not going to do is start telling people how to live their lives. We're not going to start dictating to people what they do. It is an ambitious target, it's a realisable target, but it's not going to be one in which we tell people how to live their lives.
You can have both, can you? Well, Starmer's appearance at COP29 is notable after most world leaders, including US President Joe Biden, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz as well, snubbed the climate summit. I'm joined now by the environmental scientist and commentator, Professor Christopher Dunn. Good evening, Christopher. Christian, sorry. Professor Christian Dunn, it's been a long day for me. I've spoken to you normally at 10 o'clock in the morning. Right, listen, where does he get this figure from of 81% reduction in emissions by 2035?
It's a very precise figure, isn't it? It'd be interesting to see the detail that he's got that from. But it's bold. I mean, it most certainly is bold. Is it achievable? I think that will be the question. It will be if we probably address the elephant in the room, which is energy. And at the present time, there's a big push, obviously, for renewables, and quite rightly so too. But we're probably not going to get anywhere close to 81% unless we look at nuclear. And I think that is probably something that many people don't want to talk about. But if we really want to get that figure, anything like 81%, we will have to look at the possibility of using nuclear in this country.
He was trying to keep everybody happy today by saying, I'm going to cut emissions by 81%, but I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. He even went so far as to say, you can still eat meat, you can still drink milk. He's obviously picking up on all of the nanny state discussion that's going on around the country at the moment, with people saying, will you just get out of my life unless I break the law, and then you're welcome to knock on my door. So how does he do both? He's got to tell us what to do. He's just not being honest, is he?
Oh, that's a good one. I would stress that hopefully this government has learnt some mistakes of the previous government, which is to try to address some of the positives about this move.
Oh, no, he doesn't. He's got nothing positive to say about anything, Christian. He's Mr. Doom and Gloom, glass half empty.
Well, I couldn't possibly say that as a non-political person here, as a scientist. But my issue often with this whole problem of we have to do something about climate change. We have to.
Do we?
It is causing so many problems for people around the world, and it will start to cause us problems. I think in the UK we're so buffered from the problems that we forget about it. We don't think it's actually affecting us. You know, if I work in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam, there whole communities are moving out of the Mekong Delta because land is unfarmable. Whole areas are just becoming no farming there anymore because of climate change, because of sea level rise. In France, in the Loire Valley, I was there on holiday this year, lovely place. I was chatting to some of the vineyard owners. They've lost 20% of their crop in the past 5 years because of the changing weather patterns. We're very buffered from the effects of climate change in this country. We are going to have to do something about it. And that doesn't have to be negative. There are so many positives about taking action. One of those would be using nature-based solutions to mitigate some of the effects of this and actually, store more carbon. That basically means making so much more of our landscape greener and a nicer place for us to be in. So there are so many positives here.
But you see, I understand the planet appears to be warming up. Like, I'm OK with that. I mean, I find it very conflicting when I'm sat in a beer garden on a Saturday afternoon in October. I can't lie to you, Christian. But is that man-made climate change, is my question, I suppose I'm saying. And if man changes our behaviour in terms of carbon emissions, is it going to make any difference in any of our lifetimes to the planet heating up? Or should we be going, right, we need more forests, we need more dams, we need more, I don't know, air conditioning in hospitals, whatever it is that we can practically do to live in a warmer climate?
Okay, so I don't want to tell anyone what to think. I would just say, look at the evidence. The evidence shows that obviously the climate has always changed, but for the past 10,000 years, it's been relatively stable. And since the Industrial Revolution, we have seen levels of CO2 double, and we have seen an increase in global temperatures. That doesn't mean it's going to get warmer all the time, which I confess in October when you're in a beer garden, it'd be quite nice. I confess. However, that's not what it means. What it really means is there's changing weather patterns, and that's what we are seeing. In the UK, we are seeing wetter summers, warmer winters. We're seeing that. In other parts of the world, they're seeing far more extreme versions of those changing weather patterns. We know CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and we know that increasing it will increase the temperature of the planet. And we've seen that increase of CO2 since the Industrial Revolution. That's the evidence.
But we need CO2. We do need a level of carbon dioxide, don't we, for trees to grow and plants to thrive?
Absolutely, 100% we need CO2, utterly essential. And, there are some levels to show that increased CO2 to a certain degree can actually help plants grow. But that's to a certain degree. We have reached way beyond that, and that's what's causing the problems.
All right, Professor Christy and Dunn, good to see you at night time for a change. Coming up at 10 o'clock, a former Labour aide suggested on this very show that we don't need farmers. How dare he? Let's tackle that next.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight, and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest, tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well. 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about, likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of Northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 wind.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner.
If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
Patrick's confused face says it all, really, doesn't it? That was a former Labour aide there suggesting that we can somehow do without farmers. Well, after an almighty backlash, Starmer has distanced himself from the comments today.
I totally disagree. I'm absolutely committed to supporting our farmers.
But British farmers are furious with this Labour government.
I don't think they have a clue. I don't think they have a clue that the hours that farmers put in all around the country.
Also Also tonight, a breastfeeding charity has sparked outrage after allowing trans women to join classes. But over in America, Donald Trump is using very strong words, backpedaling on access to trans surgery for kids.
No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender.
It's controversial. We're also going to be having all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my panel, the columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, immigration lawyer Stephen Wolfe and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Buckle up, bedtime crew. It's Bev Tonight. (10:01) though, here are your news headlines with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Bev. The time is just after 10 o'clock and these are your latest headlines. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister has said that Sir Keir respects the decision of the Archbishop of Canterbury to resign. Justin Welby stepped down earlier this afternoon following a damning report into a prolific child abuser associated with the Church of England. The report concluded that Welby had failed to act after learning about the abuse by John Smythe QC in 2013. The Prime Minister has also pledged an 81% cut to UK emissions by 2035. That was speaking at the UN Climate Summit in Azerbaijan. Sir Keir Starmer says there is what he called a huge opportunity for the UK to lead the world in the economy of tomorrow. He said that would mean better jobs and economic growth in the UK. Here's what the PM had to say earlier on today.
Let me be clear. There is no national security. There is no economic security. There is no global security without climate security. And this is a huge opportunity for investment, for UK businesses, for British workers, if we act now to lead the world in the economy of tomorrow.
A rally hosted by the Friends of the British Overseas Territories took place in London earlier this evening. Dubbed Chagos Islands Call to Action, the event aimed to bring together supporters who will unite different communities against the handover of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. One attendee told GBNews that the British government has thus far refused to listen.
The government has shown sign over the years that they are not even willing to talk to the Chagosians, to communicate with the Chagosians. And on the issues of sovereignty, they have to consult the Chagosian. It's a must. It's not an ask. It's not an opinion. It's international law.
Terminally ill adults who are expected to die within 6 months would be able to request assistance to end their own life. That's under the proposed end-of-life bill. But someone with a disability or mental health issue would not be considered eligible. The controversial bill has raised some concerns that people could feel pressure into ending their lives prematurely. MPs will have their first vote on the proposals on the 29th of November. And in royal news, Queen Camilla has returned to public duties today after her chest infection. The Queen attended the Booker Prize reception at Clarence House this evening, telling people there that she's, quote, getting much better and is on the mend. We can also now reveal that in the last few moments, Samantha Harvey has been announced as the first woman since 2019 to win the Booker Prize. Her book, Orbital, about astronauts looking down at Earth, has just been named as the winner of the £50,000 prize and trophy at a ceremony in London. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Bev in for Patrick this evening, so thank you for joining me. Nobody loves farmers more than GB News. We don't deliberately invite people on this channel to set them up with a gotcha question. But last night, former Tony Blair advisor John McTernan appeared to suggest that if farmers weren't going to do as they're told, then they deserve to go out of business. You might have seen it by now, but if not, here it is.
The farmers still get a privileged status for their farms, and I think that may or may not be right. I'm personally in favour of doing to farmers who want to go on the streets, we can do to them what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners.
So just to be clear, John, you would beat them up?
No, close. I mean, there's an industry we could do without.
So, OK, all right, so this got weird. So you would do to farmers what Margaret Thatcher did to miners, which was, and you know, she used very heavy-handed police tactics, followed by what? Putting them out of business.
If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
Now, anyone that watches GB News regularly will know that John McTernan can be deliberately provocative, and we love him for that mischief. But on this occasion, he seemed to maybe unwittingly crystallise just why Labour appear to be punishing farmers by changing inheritance tax rules. To be fair, McTernan was speaking for himself and not the Labour Party, which was confirmed today by Keir Starmer when challenged by our very own Chris Hope.
I totally disagree. I'm absolutely committed to supporting our farmers. I said that before the election, and I say it after the election. That is why in our budget last week I was very pleased that we're investing £5 billion of our budget over the next 2 years into farming. That is really important for our farmers, and I will do everything I can to support them, because I think it's essential that they not only prosper, but prosper well into the future. So I totally disagree with those comments.
What is he talking about? He's saying one thing and doing the polar opposite. Maybe the Islington dinner party set only visit the country for a week in Padstow, so shouldn't they be listening to the farmers themselves who are getting ready to spray manure all over Downing Street this time next week? And frankly, good luck to them. Here is one such farmer who needs listening to.
I don't think they have a clue. I don't think they have a clue that the hours that farmers put in all around the country, a lot of unpaid family labour. And you put that now against a backdrop of changing tax, changing legislation, environmental legislation, changing subsidy schemes. There's just so many moving parts in our businesses. And I think it's not any single one of them that's causing this outcry from farmers. It's the sort of summation of them all that actually a lot of people are just saying, well, this is just getting too much. It's just one step too far.
It is a step too far. The question that nobody from Labour seems bothered to answer is, where are we going to get healthy, local, British-grown food if farmers can't survive this pressure? Punishing farmers is going down badly with both the political left and right, and the only people who will be happy are the massive corporations who will buy up all of the farmland and probably put solar panels on them. Let's see what the panel thinks. This evening, joining the studio, delighted to say, still here, Esther Krakow, Bill Remmel and Stephen Wolfe. I don't know whether you saw this last night, guys, on GB News, but if you did, Esther, or you've seen it now, what was your response when you heard what John said? Did you think it made you understand a bit where Labour are coming from on this?
I think it confirmed to me that, one, Labour have no idea what they're doing, and that Keir Starmer really has no judgment. And look, the irony about Keir Starmer being at COP right now and committing the UK to reducing emissions by 80-something percent, but they're trying to cancel North Sea oil drilling contracts, so we'll actually have to import oil and gas from other parts of the world, ironically, which is more carbon intensive, or the fact that if small farmers go out of business, we'll have to import more of our food, which again is not environmentally friendly. They don't know what they're doing. They have no clue what they're doing, and they just he's just said the quiet part out loud because was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Ray Reeves, the Chancellor, told Sainsbury's
and problem with your mic, Esther. I'm so sorry. Let me. We're going to try and fix your mics. I want to hear what you've got to say, Bill. Where are we going to get our food? When Labour have destroyed all these family farms and they've all been bought up by massive corporations to build houses on, or solar panel farms, wind turbine farms, where are we going to buy British-grown food?
Well, we invest £5 billion a year into the farming industry, unlike any other industry in the country. And look, I disagree with what John McTernan said last night. You rightly said he has, and I know him well, he has a reputation for being provocative and challenging, and I think his judgment chip went missing last night. But let's have a reality check. The farmers and their supporters, their reaction to the inheritance tax changes has been hysterical, over the top and not grounded in the facts. If you look at the reality of the situation, they had a massively preferential inheritance tax deal, unlike any other section of society before the budget, and they've got it after the budget as well. They will be able to pass on £3 million without paying a penny of inheritance tax, and anything above that amount, they get a 50% reduction, and the inheritors get 10 years to pay it. That's a damn good deal.
So why are they making such a fuss then? Because they're greedy?
I think they're being ill-advised by a very concerted farming lobby, and they've been at this for years.
That sounds so patronising, Bill.
No, but
I just can't.
Hold on.
I can't agree much
Stephen.
more.
Look at the facts. Under the old regime, 2/3 of the tax benefit, and that's what it was, went to just 200 families out of 209,000 farms. The very wealthy, half of them weren't farmers, they were landowners who'd gone into it to get an inheritance tax break.
Steve,
that's not entirely true. I mean, what we have is we have something in the region of over 87,000 farmers who are all going to be impacted by this. I know that because I advise on inheritance tax and how to deal with the complex rules that they go. And the 3 million is not really applicable to most of the farmers out there at all. They know that the assets in their farm and the land of their farm is a lot more than that 3 million itself, just to have a farm capable of just being able to survive. And that's, you're looking at prices of needing over 100 acres, 200 acres, 300 acres. That's enough just to keep them going. But it's not just that. And why McTurnan? If there's anyone that we don't need, we don't need McTurnan when he's making comments like this.
Well, the theory being, I mean, look, John's not here to defend himself. We did ask him if he wants to come back on tonight. I would have loved to discussed it with him. The theory being that maybe he was pitching for a job in Starmer's government.
Well, that's not very hard. Or you have to... He may very well get it. He lacks the same judgment as most members of the cabinet. I mean, look, the chance... This idea that it was just a slip of tongue and he didn't really know what he was doing, or he was just trying to be provocative, or actually, you know, members of Keir Starmer's cabinet are really competent. Rachel Reeves told Wetherspoons and Tesco, the CEOs, who confirmed that they're going to raise their prices because they've been slapped with a £1 billion extra tax bill because of the NI increase. She told them they can save costs by making use of efficiencies. And I thought, isn't that funny? You see, someone in government telling private businesses to make use of efficiencies, and yet the civil service and NHS couldn't waste more money if they tried.
But here we are. We're talking about this billions that are being invested into the farmers. We've seen the farmers now being attacked on what helps them in terms of fertiliser. We're having changes in the rules which will increase the prices of fertiliser. We're looking at energy costs which are going to hammer them because we're now going to put wind farms. And some of those landowners that you're talking about, some of those big landowners, are the ones who are looking at the price that they get to rent the land at £500 an acre from a farmer, but they'll get £1,200 an acre from those who are solar panels. And that's why they're turfing out these people. And the solar panels, where are they getting the money from? Taxpayers. Well, it's a subsidy to put farmers out of business.
Let's take a specific example.
And that's your government policy.
Subsidies
to put farmers out of business.
Let's take a specific example of those landowners. Jeremy Clarkson, who's proudly written about the fact that the only reason he got into farming was for the inheritance tax break.
Oh, rubbish.
No, that's what he said in the Sunday Times.
That with his tongue in his cheek.
Yeah, just like John McTurnan, right?
Yeah, and I said, John, you know, John might have been deliberately provocative, but Jeremy Clarkson didn't get into farming just because he could, when he died,
and
he's got something to do.
That's what he wrote in his
column
in the...
Have you seen Clarkson's farm?
No, I have.
It's a brutal life with no profit.
I think farmers work incredibly hard, but I really don't see, in terms of natural justice, why, and it is true, Stephen, as a farming couple, you can pass on £3 million completely inheritance tax-free. I don't see why that is a bad deal when no one else in the country can get it. And I tell you what, for the critics who are saying this is the wrong move, then tell us what other taxes on hard-working people we should put up.
Well, they just put a tax on NI, which is a tax on employing people, which is the same thing. Because guess what? Hard-working people, thanks to the Chancellor's statements, are going to lose their jobs in Tesco, so they can take advantage of the efficiency. That is exactly what the Chancellor said.
Reality check. If this change isn't implemented, which other taxes would you put up? Because that's the way the Treasury works.
You mean, hold on.
I'd start reducing taxation.
You know what I would do?
Cutting the costs of businesses.
If I was the government, I would stick to my manifesto promise, because they told us that all Hold on. No,
You
I'm
know
telling you.
you are.
I'm
No,
telling
I'm
you.
not.
I would do what the government said they were going to do when they were promising this country the sun and the moon. That all their plans had been fully costed for, and they were bashing the Tories for taxing us more than any other generation in history. And guess what? They did. They quadrupled that. So I'm sorry. They have lied to the British public. They have lied. And I'll tell you what I would do. I would stick to my promise.
If you really want to be efficient,
no, that's what they promised the public.
Being in the Treasury is a zero-sum game.
We're not talking about the Treasury. We're talking about the government.
No. And I'm talking about the government. It's a zero-sum game. If you don't put up this tax, you're going to have to put other taxes up.
They said they weren't going to put up any. They said they weren't going to put up taxes.
That's where we are. You explain which other taxes.
No, they said they weren't going to put up taxes.
It's not just about putting up taxes. It's about cutting costs. It's about dealing with illegal immigration and cutting out the $8 billion a year that we're paying to have illegal migrants coming here in asylum processes. It's about cutting the efficiency in the civil service, which has grown exponentially. We're going to have 6 million people working in public services now, more than we've ever needed to. We should be doing what Elon Musk...
That's 10% of the population,
We should be doing
6 million.
Elon Musk's job and coming in, having a Department of Government Efficiency and slashing them. We should not be paying We should not be having civil servants at senior roles having unfunded pensions of £169,000
I don't know where you guys
a
have
year.
been for the last 14 years. Public services have been cut to the bone. I'm a school governor. I know what happens in school budgets. Go into the National Health Service, the lack of resources. Look at the massive lack of funding for potholes across the country. That's
Then
the
why
real world.
did the government say that all their plans were costed for and they didn't have to raise taxes and then come back and slap employers with a £15 billion tax?
Because there was...
So they lied?
No.
They did lie?
No, it is true that there was a big black hole in the previous
Where is
government
this black
spending
hole?
plan.
Where is this black hole?
Well, I'll give you, for instance, the costs for asylum hotels were underestimated by about 80-fold.
You know how to get rid of those?
And the
Stop these asylum seekers.
Exactly.
There's a clear solution there. Stop putting them in hotels. That's a solution. But instead, no. They took away winter fuel allowances from pensioners.
You can't do that overnight. You can come on panels like this and make glib statements.
You can do it overnight.
The real
question no more asylum applications. No more asylum applications. No more fancy hotels. None of it.
Just
That's how
turn
you
the
cut
boats
that
back
cost.
at France and have
Exactly.
the international issue that
They're
we're going to
obvious
have.
solutions. They just don't want to do it.
The easy populist trope.
It's not a populist trope. It's the reality. They are willing to let pensioners freeze to death, but they don't want to take away hotels from asylum seekers. That is laughable.
It is.
That's laughable.
As Stephen said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in America because Trump has gone right, we have gone left.
Yeah,
and
in
if
America.
this starts to do well in America, Starmer's going to be batting on a very sticky wicket.
Wait until the public services break down in the states where Trump runs the system.
Right, listen, everyone, there's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to win Christmas on GB News. It's a Great British Giveaway. That's £25,025 in tax-free cash, plus a whole host of Christmas goodies to ensure that you have a fantastically festive time. The best news is we'll get it to you in time for the big day. Time is running out, though, to get your entry, and here are all the details you need. And talking of Donald Trump, is it time that we in the UK followed his lead and start backpedalling on trans policies that might just harm our kids? Don't go anywhere.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
A Tesco store on a Scottish island has defied locals by ignoring pleas to stay closed on Sundays.
Tesco's has said that no member of staff in Stornoway would be forced to work on a Sunday and that it had received a significant amount of positive reaction to its plans.
Well, let's talk now to the Minister of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kenneth Stewart. Good morning to you, Reverend Stewart. You're trying to keep Sunday special, and if Tesco are going to open up, that means it won't be quite as special for you.
Well, yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yes, Tesco, for some reason, they claim it's not economic advantage, but for some reason they've decided to go against hundreds of years of tradition on this island and the deeply held religious convictions of many, many people, including, of course, their own customers who are really grieved by this decision. We come obviously from the standpoint that a day of rest is effectively mandatory. It's a human right, along with the other 10 commandments which have undergirded our moral and legal fabric in society. It actually enshrines the human right to a day of rest. And of course, in the UK, that's been eroded for many, many years. Incidentally, it's still far more respected on the continent. But for us here, the Sabbath or the day of rest has been very, very important. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And for some reason, Tesco have decided just to go against that.
And Reverend Stewart, we were actually talking about this earlier, how in European countries, I mean, even in France, which is a secular country, still very few shops will open on a Sunday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. Welcome back to Patrick Christys with me, Bev Turner, only on GB News. So, the world's oldest breastfeeding charity has seen two of its most senior figures quit over a policy that allows trans women to join breastfeeding classes. So, just to be clear, that is biologically born men transitioning to be women, being pumped full of hormones to produce a sort of milk that is fed to a baby. That's right. Over 100 local authorities across the UK have also this week apparently asked parents to declare their 3-year-old's preferred gender when registering them for a place at school. I can't. Sometimes you just think, I can't be reading this, surely. And it has emerged tonight that there are hundreds of women planning a protest at England's Nations League game against the Republic of Ireland on Sunday, that's a football match, over a teenage female footballer who asked a bearded transgender opponent on the pitch, "Are you a man?" But over in America, Donald Trump has already committed to reverse policies like trans surgery for kids and the spread of gender ideology in schools. Have a listen.
No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end.
Well, I'm joined now by transgender teacher and friend of the channel, Debbie Hayton. Debbie, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. What do you think, Debbie, first of all, when you hear Donald Trump talking like that? It is language that we have not heard in the UK or America for several years now.
Well, he's very clear about what he thinks is Donald Trump, isn't he? And what's coming over is a reaction to what I would claim to be just lunacy over the last 5 or 10 years, where the view's gone round that we all have a gender identity. Children need to find their gender identity. Sport should be divided by a gender identity. And yet nobody can actually define what a gender identity actually is. It's ludicrous.
What do you mean by that? No one can define what a gender identity is. What do you mean?
Well, what is a gender identity, Bev?
Well, I mean, I think what you're saying is that, to my mind, you can be born male, born as a man, a boy, and born as a girl, and you grow up to be a man or a woman. But I think in terms of gender, so that's your biological sex. In terms of gender, my understanding is you can be more feminine, more masculine, and all of us, sometimes at different parts of the day, I feel a bit more masculine than some days I feel a bit more stereotypically feminine. I think that's all right. But what people object to, obviously, is the assumption now that if I say that I am a man or a woman and I'm a man in a dress, that I have to buy into that, which is clearly a delusion of sorts for some people, Debbie. Is that unfair?
Well, there is a delusion going around. What you've picked there is just normal human preferences. We're all a mixture of the masculine and the feminine, some more than others. But what seems to have been invented is this gender identity, which is almost like a gendered soul, which is more important than our biological sex when determining whether somebody is a man or a woman, or should be treated by others as a man or a woman, flying in the face of common sense, because we all know what the difference between a man and a woman is, and we always have known that.
So when you hear stories like parents being asked to say on a form with their 3-year-old what is their preferred gender, what's happened there, Debbie? That's madness.
It is madness, and it's also unhelpful. And what really does make me grimace is we're not supposed to collect data if there's not a need for that data. So why on earth are schools collecting this data? What are they going to do with it? Where are they going to store it? How are they going to use it? And to what effect? And if there's no purpose for that data, they shouldn't be collecting it.
But they are. So there clearly is pressure coming from somewhere within that nursery establishment, or maybe with the local authority, I don't know, to encourage children, encourage the parents first and foremost, and maybe the children then secondary, to encourage them to not see gender and sex as immutable biological characteristics, but something that you can just pick.
Yeah, well, like picking a football team, you can pick a gender identity. But this is fundamental. And to put these ideas into children's heads that whether they're a boy or a girl has nothing to do with their bodies, it's just unhelpful, confusing, and probably harming. You know, it's been said that this idea of childhood transition is not a neutral act. And to say to children, well, you can choose to be a boy or a girl, first of all, they can't. And putting ideas like these into children's heads by adults who, for reasons of their own, is unhelpful and harmful, I would say.
Isn't one of the worst phrases, though, and this is what Trump has just kind of blown out of the water with what he said, this phrase that child was born in the wrong body, let's say, or even the adult was born in the wrong body. Do you subscribe to that as a definition of what's happened in the case of someone even like yourself?
Well, we're all born in our own bodies. We can't choose that. So I was born in my body. It wasn't the wrong body. It was my body. Now, I've taken steps to change it, so I'm more comfortable with it. And perhaps it's an extreme form of changing it. But lots of people change lots of aspects about their bodies so they're more comfortable with it. But that doesn't mean to say that you were born in the wrong body at all, no. And it's a metaphor which has become... something fundamental is this idea of being born in the wrong body. No, nobody's born in the wrong body.
Because it's such a powerful phrase that, you know, I hear my teenage girls will use it because they've heard it. And in a way, it makes such a complex issue kind of easy to understand. Well, it's just nature. Some of us are born girls, some of us are born boys, and some of us are born in the wrong body, Mum, they say. And you have to say, no, not necessarily. That's not strictly true. But it does shut down the conversation really effectively. Isn't that one of the things that Trump is going to do, though? He's going to reignite this conversation in a way that puts common sense and possibly truth back at the centre of the issue.
Well, yes, he certainly says what he thinks. But to be fair, on this country, this is the country where the caste review came from. We were actually applying policies of common sense while America was still in the land of delusion. So I think we should also look at ourselves and look at what we have done for the world, and almost taking a stand as what's happened in Great Britain. And it's been a beacon for the rest of the world in some ways. Yeah. And we should be very proud of that.
Yeah. OK, Debbie, good to see you, as always. Debbie Hayton there with another dose of common sense. Right, coming up the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They have arrived. We'll be looking at them in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight, and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest, tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well, 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about, likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of Northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner. My panel are still here. Columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, immigration lawyer and director, Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. In just a minute, I'm going to bring you all of tomorrow's front pages. In fact, we're going to do it right now, which is good, isn't it? OK, right. Front page of the Daily Express. My profound sense of shame at church failings. This is what we were talking about earlier, of course. Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, resigning over this child abuse scandal, not the way he would have wanted his career in the church to come to an end. Daily Mail is going with the church in crisis as Welby forced to quit. Also a picture there on the front of the Princess of Wales. Metro also, Welby quits in shame. The Archbishop has bowed to pressure over abuse report, they say. The Sun are also discussing what we were talking about earlier. It's all kicking off. Apparently, the BBC want Mark Chapman to share match of the day job with Kelly from Sky, not Kelly Dalglish's daughter, Kelly Cates. This is Kelly Summers to take turns in the hot seat. Insiders have said that Bucky's pick Chappers is not a fan of the idea. Oof, it's either him or nobody, is saying. Brown's warning to Starmer. Front page of the Eye. Benefit cap is trapping families in poverty. And the Daily Telegraph front page. The Telegraph writer in Kafkaesque hate crime inquiry. This is a friend of the show, Alison Pearson, who has revealed that she was visited this weekend over a year-old tweet. And they say it's Kafkaesque. It is, isn't it, Esther?
Yeah, I mean, so reading what she wrote about this experience, they couldn't tell her what the tweet from a year ago.
No, apparently.
Yeah, what offensive tweet from a year ago, what it was, and she can't know not the accuser, the victim. That's the police corrected it and said this person is not an accuser, but they're a victim. And I think I had to put this into context because I know people who have been burgled, who have had machetes pulled on them for their watches, who run corner shops, who've had people literally nick stuff from their shops and affect their livelihoods. And the police are nowhere to be seen. But the police have time on Remembrance Sunday to go and visit someone for a tweet they made a year ago as part of a non-crime hate incident. The fact that we even have this is horrifying to me.
Mm.
How did we get to this point?
I have no idea.
It's an evidence of us being into some sort of communistic hellscape, where we'd think we were in some sort of movie that's been created for Netflix. But of course, this is the reality. As a barrister, one of the things you taught very clearly early on in life as a criminal is that you have to know your accuser, know what you're being accused of. Clearly here, you're not. And not only that, why it's dystopian, why it's scary, and why it should be removed rather than what our Home Secretary is thinking of doing, expanding it, is the idea that it's a non-hate crime. This idea almost comes out of George Orwell's 1984. Yeah. Look, it's almost something that falls out of that and says clearly to us, we're going to create something that's not a crime. It's an incident. Yeah. And you have to voluntarily come and see us.
But you're still going to have the police knock on your door on a Sunday morning when you get ready to go to a remembrance service.
All this is doing is trying to perpetuate fear in people for saying anything that they want. It's an attack on free speech, and we should withstand this with all our might.
Bill, defend it. Come on, Bill. Honestly, I really respect all these Labourites coming on this channel and trying to do the best job they can of saying this country's in a good place. It's awful, Bill.
Well, if you expect me to do that, Bev, you're going to have to wait an awful long time. I think this is really disturbing. And actually, this doesn't result from recent legislation. I've read the article. It comes from the 1986 Public Order Act. Now, how the police...
But it wasn't happening. It hasn't been happening until Starmer was in number 10, Bill.
Look, read the article. That's the law that the police are relying on. And it's really disturbing. And I'm an absolute passionate advocate of free speech and open debate. And I spent a lot of time in government as a government minister working on the prevent strategy, tackling extremism. And I learnt the hard way that the only line you can draw in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable is violence and the advocacy of violence. And I don't think, I disagree with an awful lot of things that Alison Pearson writes. I don't think anything she's written would have advocated violence. And how we've ended up in this situation, I think there need to be serious questions asked of the police.
My concern is about that. That's coming on to the next stage. Who are the chief constables actually carrying this out? Why, having seen recent cases where it's gone against them, are they still pursuing this?
Who has empowered them?
Why have they feel that they've got the power to go and do this? And that's equally concerning. And we go back to what's happened about Justin Welby. These are the same individuals who have overinflated egos, utilising politics rather than the principle of policing, which is ignoring the free speech will just go and knock on your door. Deal with serious crime. They're too frightened to deal with serious crime. It's much easier to get this as a result.
How can they deploy resources to do this?
I think it's time for the chief constables, anyone who has this within their force, they should go. They should be resigning.
But should they just say, I'm not investigating your stupid complaints?
Well, but that would be the common sense thing to do, because I'm assuming that every single burglary and every single crime, every single shoplifting incident has been investigated and rightly handled before they can do this. But we know it doesn't. So I can't believe any police force would deploy the resources to tackle a non-crime hate incident and not even tell the person they're accusing of this what sparked this investigation in the first place, and then call the person who reported her the victim.
The thing is, Bill, it was Starmer that set the tone for this. And what I mean by that is after the Southport riots, when he came out and said this is all the far right and people got arrested, 500 people went to jail. Some of them were chucking bricks at the police and those people should go to prison, absolutely. But some of them who were arrested, like Bernie Spofford, who's also mentioned in this Daily Telegraph article, who then there was no further action against her, that was for a tweet that she'd copied and pasted. Starmer set the tone of that period of time. Is this not a reverberation from that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, you know, we faced society almost falling apart during the riots in the summer, and I think Keir handled it effectively, and people who had committed acts of violence, and there were really serious acts of violence, or advocated violence, rightly the courts dealt with them.
Do you see them as the same, committing violence or advocating violence as the same? Because I don't.
If you're explicitly advocating violence, then I think it is a crime.
Yeah, but
anything else of hate language, I don't accept as a crime.
But I don't think
I tell you what, there's overreach.
Exactly
there's overreach going on here. None of the legislation that has been passed over the last 30 years would lead to this kind of police action. It's the way it's being implemented that I think raises really serious concerns. And that situation where a police officer knocks at your door and says, you've potentially committed a crime, but we can't tell you what the crime is horrifying.
Yeah, and it's not just that. When we talked about early on about having to raise taxes to provide public services, here is a classic example of a public service that is actually spending its hard tax money on things that they should not be doing.
Yeah.
If they really want to justify their increases in their budgets for the police, then stop doing this. That's exactly why we can point to the hypocrisy of these people in power.
Esther, does this kind of thing, I mean, Alison Pearson says here, I really don't know what post they were referring to. This was on Twitter. I do know that a year ago I was consumed with the aftermath of the October the 7th attacks by Hamas and the anti-Semitic slogans being brandished and chanted at pro-Palestine marches. She's having to work out what it is that she might have said.
Yeah.
Does this kind of behaviour from the police make you cautious about what you would say online now? Do you feel like we're living in a different age where we're self-censoring?
Not me, because I'm a bit mad. But I can understand the people that would be concerned about, you know, the police turning up at their door, even if nothing happens, even if you know, she's not charged with anything or there's nothing comes from this. There is a feeling in the public. If you're not Alison Pearson, if you're not writing for The Telegraph, if you don't have a high-paid job, if you don't live sort of in the M25 bubble, if you're just sort of a pig farmer in Staffordshire, where's your protection? Yeah. Can you find a journalist who'll pick up your story? That's the real impact.
We need
the
to
average
stop
member of the public.
The double standards. You know, I profoundly believe in free speech on all sides of the debate, but I've sat in this studio with GBNews panellists who've been calling for police action against pro-Palestinian demonstrators who chanted the slogan "from the river to the sea." Now, I happen to believe they're wrong, but they
haven't heard them on any panels we've been on because we've all
I have debated it on this channel with people who've taken that view.
I remember hearing that. I remember hearing you on that debate.
Police action. You know, we need even-handedness and we need the end to double standards.
I completely agree with you there.
This chilling effect has had a thing on people self-censoring.
Yes.
I know that I have.
Yeah, I certainly did in the aftermath of Southport. I mean, there were things that people have posted. I wouldn't post those sorts of things, but I did then stop and think, crikey, if they've...
But it's been going on for a while. I mean,
you know,
people lose their jobs for saying things about transgender issues or migration or issues about that. And that has been having the chilling effect for a long time. We've talked about political correctness. This is where it ends up. If you do not have a government that is firmly behind free speech, which is once again why we're looking across the pond to Donald Trump, if he manages to succeed in what he wants to do through the universities, through defunding public services, removing taxation from them, if he starts to do that, then there could be a groundswell here for a party that is willing to do exactly the same.
The idea that Donald Trump's in favour of free speech, do me a favour.
Oh, Billy, totally is. Why has he got Elon Musk on board if he's not in favour of free speech? Absolutely. That's a debate for another day. Right, listen, an Essex police spokesman has said, we are investigating a report passed to us by another force. The report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. You can read all about it in the paper tomorrow. Now, coming up, I bring you all the rest of tomorrow's newspapers' front pages. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Yeah, it's been claimed that the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall portfolios have generated almost £50 million.
Well, the contracts with public bodies said to include a £37 million agreement with the Ministry of Justice, an £11.4 million deal between Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. This is what appeared on the programme last night.
Charles and William aren't telling you about their secret millions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for paying your rent every now and then.
Their private estates, the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, make Charles and William £50 million a year. But they have repeatedly refused to reveal exactly which properties they own.
Can we have a report on the list of properties?
I don't see why.
I'm not really shocked that they're making money. That's the whole point of them, isn't it?
Morning, and good morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a big news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy, and these properties, portfolios as well. I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Bev Turner. I am still joined, delighted to say, in the studio, Esther Kraku, Stephen Wolfe and Bill Rammell. Right, we're looking at the papers. Obviously, everyone has gone pretty much with the Welby story, with him having to resign because of the child abuse scandal. We've discussed this so far tonight, guys, haven't we? What else should we look at? Cut waiting times or get the sack, Streeting tells hospital chiefs. This is Labour loving to punish people again. There's a theme here, Bill. This punitive mindset of this government.
Well, at least they're doing some good.
The NHS has had a huge increase in investment, and I was really struck reading Alan Milburn at the weekend, who was Secretary of State for Health in the last Labour government. He's advising Wes Streeting, and he said, go back to, I think it was 2001, where he got a 7% annual real terms increase for the NHS, the best it had ever had. He went back to the department and the officials said it's not enough. And I think if you look particularly at what's happened to health service spending over the last 4 years, it was squeezed massively in the first 10 years of the Tory government. It went up quite significantly for the last 4 years, and yet outputs flatlined. That is not acceptable, and there needs to be accountability.
Well, I mean, part of that is immigration. When you allow a million people into the country over 2 years, that tends to happen. But I do agree with Wes Streeting here. I think it's absolutely important for governments, for ministers to change the mindset around public services. But here's the thing, though. Healthcare doesn't work the same as other departments in the sense that even if you get more appointments in, you're treating people like cattle on a conveyor belt. Like you get 10-minute appointments, 10-minute appointments. That shouldn't be the metric. It shouldn't be the metric of getting more appointments. It should be our health outcomes improving, right? Our cancer treatment outcomes improving. That's what it should be. It shouldn't be, you get more people to have 10 minutes with GPs. Are we actually getting healthier as a country? No. That's the real thing. But I think he's on the right track. And you know what? To be honest, I will never begrudge anyone that wants to make the NHS more efficient.
Yeah. You must be on board with that, Steve.
I'm on board with it, but I'm just a cynic here. I can't see him firing anyone.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's the NHS. They don't like to fire people, and it's the civil service. So how can they?
Right, it is time now to crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Esther, your Greatest Britain nominee, please.
My Greatest Britain nominee. Who is it? The BBC. Yes, the BBC. I just remember the BBC because Gary Lineker's leaving after this season. So Match of the Day might actually become watchable again.
That's why, because he hasn't been pushed though, Esther. He's
the official story. The official story is he's resigning, but he's been pushed. No.
Okay.
Right. My understanding, he wanted to carry on, and he wasn't given the deal that he wanted.
Oh,
he wasn't even offered a contract.
No, that's
you
what
were
the
a football expert, Bill.
I am a football expert, but
every man
but the
always.
BBC media
fan, so he's a bit conservative.
Okay, Stephen, who's your greatest?
It's got to be Donald Trump for his recent speeches, but particularly the one that he wants to row back on transgender, and particularly the way that we're looking at children.
So he's your honorary greatest Briton.
Honorary greatest Briton.
Well, his mum was Scottish.
Mine is a guy called Harry Buddha Marga, the first above-the-knee double amputee who conquered Everest, for just sheer resilience and bravery and determination.
No, why did you choose someone meaningful? Oh, no, that's too good.
I mean, listen, I love Harry Buddha Magar there. That's great, but I'm sorry, Donald Trump got to get it for me tonight. As you know, I think we've got such amazingly exciting times ahead. Right, Union Jackass. Esther, who's your Union Jackass?
Rachel Reeves for her tone-deaf comment to Tesco, facing £1 billion extra in taxes over the next few years, telling them that they could make use of efficiencies to absorb that extra cost, which sounds like actually laying off staff.
$1 billion is a huge...
I mean, she's just tone deaf. Sounds like someone who's never run a business before, you can tell.
I'm not sure she has she?
Yeah, no, she's never done
that. Neither has most people in cabinet.
Oh, well, I can't go without saying Justin Welby. Absolutely, for everything.
OK, this isn't fair.
So Justin Welby has done everything over the past years, and we've talked about it ad nauseum.
You've already covered this story this evening. Lecher League GB, Britain's oldest breastfeeding charity, who madly allowed men to take part in breastfeeding classes.
Yeah.
It's bonkers.
Yeah. Well, who am I going to go with for that? I'm probably going to go with Lalesh because it is crazy and somebody has to push back on some of that because it's affecting maternity services all across the board, and then women's healthcare suffers. Right, I've had a lovely time. Thank you so much. It's been nice to sit here in case of instead of Patrick Christys. It's been a very long day for me. I'll be back on your telly tomorrow morning at 9:30 doing Britain's Newsroom. But Esther, Stephen and Bill, it's lovely to see you. Coming up next tonight, it is Headliners presented by Andrew Doyle. Andrew, what have you got coming up on the show?
Yes, well, me and my two comedian panellists will be going through tomorrow's newspapers. Of course, we're going to be talking about Justin Welby. Who's going to replace him? I've put my bid in. We're going to be talking as well about an American couple who have split up. She's filed for divorce because her husband voted for Trump. And, of course, we're going to be talking about Alison Pearson getting in trouble with the police for a tweet.
Brilliant stuff. OK, right, I'll be back with Andrew Pearce tomorrow morning, as I say, 9:30 on Britain's Newsroom. I don't know who's sitting in this seat tomorrow night, but I think Patrick's away for a little while. Maybe it's Ben Leo. Right, see you in the morning. Sleep well.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight, and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest, tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well. 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about, likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of Northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Restaurant St. Bart's executive head chef Johnny Crowe creates ramen with a British twist, using only the finest UK-sourced produce. As the only restaurant in London to hold both a Michelin star and a green Michelin star, St. Bart's emphasises sustainability and the diversity of British ingredients. Johnny joins me now. Johnny, congratulations on having these 2 Michelins. How do you get a Michelin green star?
Probably a better question for the inspectors, but I mean, I think it's down to a lot of hard work.
What hoops do you have to go through?
So I think it's working every day on it. The sustainability isn't something that you just achieve and then therefore you have it and you can sort of relax. It's about every day trying to be better, trying to make a restaurant and a business that is overly sustainable.
So what things do you do to make it sustainable?
So one of the main things that we've really tried to do is focusing on British produce, and actually, you know, part of that is about sustainability and food miles. A massive part of it for